I'm here with Arizona State University, Master of Social Work students. We are in Agua Prieta.
The trip is sort of split between service and learning. We walk the border on the U.S. side, walk the border on the Mexico side, just doing a little bit of a comparison of people's understandings of what border means.
We enjoy certain privileges in the United States that we sometimes take for granted.
Not understanding what's going on really builds compassion and empathy.
It was eye-opening to hear real people talking about their real lives.
So it feels really like it's meeting a need and an interest of our social work community.